The silence at that dinner table was more painful than any scream. I really tried, you know. I paid for everything, a truly fancy restaurant, the best wine they had, the most expensive dish on the menu. I wanted it to be special, a night we could all connect again. But what I got back was just a cold, sharp scorn in the eyes of my own children. Daniel and Chloe, my children. They looked at me like I was just a nuisance, an old woman who wasn't good for anything anymore. They had no idea that right there, in that very place where they made me feel completely invisible, lay hidden the greatest secret of my life. And not just my life, but their future, the future they were just then throwing away. I tried to catch their eyes, but it was like looking at strangers. Daniel, my son, and Chloe, my daughter. They were there, across from me, but their minds were miles away. They talked animatedly, but only to each other. They spoke of plans, big trips they wanted to take, money they needed, and in none of their sentences, not one, was I included. It was like I wasn't even there. The beautiful food grew cold on my plate, untouched. And honestly, my heart felt just as cold. They were humiliating me right there in the restaurant I'd picked with so much care. Not with loud words or an argument, but with something far worse, the quiet, chilling indifference of people who simply don't care about you anymore. It was a silent humiliation, a slow, painful rejection. They had no clue, none at all, that the bill for that night wouldn't just be paid with my money, with the funds I'd carefully saved. No, it would be paid with something far more expensive, the heavy regret they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. The inheritance, the one they always talked about and seemed to anticipate so much, was being decided right then and there, not by a lawyer in some stuffy office, but by the she. And not just ears. They had an owner. My name is Eleanor. I'm 75 years old now. I've spent my entire life with a needle in my hand, you know? I was a seamstress, one of those who mend, who create, who can transform old fabrics into something brand new, something beautiful. I've been a widow for almost 20 years. My husband, bless his soul, passed away too soon. After that, I learned to manage everything on my own. I did. I saved every penny I earned, every single one. My children, Daniel and Chloe, they were the most important work of my life. More important than any dress I ever sewed, any tear I ever mended. I raised both of them with all the love in the world. I really did. I made sure they never lacked anything, not a thing. Even if it meant me working until dawn, hunched over my sewing machine, eyes tired, but my heart full. Their happiness was my whole world. Today, I live in a simple house. It's not fancy, not at all, but it's full of memories. Every wall is covered with their photos. Daniel's first day of school, Chloe's silly birthday parties, our family gatherings, all of us laughing. To me, they're still those children, the little ones who used to run into my lap, giggling and wanting a hug. That's how I still see them, even now. My pension, it's modest, just enough to get by, really. But I always prided myself on something else, something I did with my late husband, a shrewd investment. That's what it was. We called it our small business. It was something we started together years ago. Something that guaranteed me a little extra income, a little security for my old age, for times like these. My children, Daniel and Chloe, they knew about it, of course, but they always thought it was minor. You know, something unimportant. Just a little sideline, they'd say. Nothing big. This financial reserve, it was my secret, and it was my security. I didn't flaunt it. Never. I didn't need to. I lived simply. Because my greatest luxury had always been to see my family happy and united. That was it. That was all I ever wanted. I held on to this trump card, this little secret nest egg, not out of distrust, you understand. Not at all. It was because I dreamed of one day handing everything over to them. Like the final stitch, the perfect ending to a life dedicated to loving them. It was meant for them, all of it. I just didn't imagine that the thread that bound us together, the one I thought was so strong, was about to snap. So cruelly. I really didn't. The thread I cherished, the one I thought was unbreakable, it started to fray. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. In recent months, I noticed the phone started ringing less. Not a sudden stop, but just less. The calls from Daniel, my eldest son, they became rarer. And when he did call, it wasn't to ask how I was or to share a story about his day. It was almost always about bills, about financial difficulties. He'd talk about the cost of things, the economy, and then, always, there would be these thinly veiled hints. Hints about how my house, this house I love, this home full of memories, was too big. Too big for just one person, for me. He didn't say, sell it, not directly, but the meaning hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. And Chloe, my youngest, my sweet girl, she always seemed busy, distant. Her voice on the phone was rushed, as if talking to her own mother was just a tiresome obligation, a box to check off a list. Sunday visits, which used to be sacred, they became rare too, always with a hurried excuse. A sudden plan, a friend who needed something, a trip they'd forgotten to mention. Each time, a new reason. I'd try to understand. I'd tell myself, they have their own lives now. They're busy. I'd say it out loud, trying to convince myself. But deep down, the truth. Oh, the truth hurt. It really did. The truth was, I was becoming a burden. That's what it felt like. A weight. It wasn't spoken, this ingratitude. It never came in direct, harsh words. It came in small gestures. In absences, a birthday, my birthday, forgotten. Not maliciously, I don't think. Just forgotten. Or a promised lunch, a simple lunch together. Canceled at the last minute. A little needle, straight to my heart. Over and over, I tried to push it away, this chill in my soul. I told myself it wasn't from age, not just from the years. It was something else, something colder. I missed them. I missed the warmth of our family, the way it used to be, the laughter, the easy conversations. I wanted it back. I wanted to rekindle that warmth. And then I had an idea. I thought, maybe if I could just make a grand gesture, something special. So I gathered my savings, every penny I could spare, and I decided to treat them to a special dinner, a really special one, at the Golden Spoon. It's a renowned restaurant in the city. You know the kind. Elegant, dim lights, soft music, linen tablecloths. The kind of place you go to for an occasion. I knew they would love it. Daniel, Chloe, they always appreciated the finer things. It would be my way of saying it. My way of saying, without words, I'm still here. I love you. Let's reconnect. Let's be family again. I wanted to buy it, you see, with that gesture. A little of the attention they no longer gave me for free. A little of their time. A little of their affection. I wanted to show them I still mattered, that I still cared, that I was still their mother. I imagined how it would be. We'd sit together, share stories. Daniel would tell me about his work, Chloe about her dreams. We'd laugh, just like old times. I pictured their faces, lit up by the soft glow of the restaurant lights, smiling, genuinely happy to be there, with me. The thought filled me with a quiet hope, a fragile little flicker in the growing darkness. I chose my best dress, even got my hair done. I wanted to look my best for them, for this night. I just didn't imagine that I was paying dearly for this, paying to witness firsthand the absolute, undeniable end of their love for me. The last stitch of hope was about to unravel, and I was going to watch it happen right there. I arrived at the Golden Spoon with so much hope in my heart. The restaurant was exactly as I'd imagined, so beautiful. Dim lights, soft music playing just barely in the background. Crisp linen tablecloths that felt so luxurious. I'd picked out my best dress, the one I hadn't worn in years, and I even had my hair done just for them. I waited there, sitting at the table I'd carefully chosen, watching the door, a little flutter of excitement in my chest. I really thought this would be a turning point. Then they arrived. Daniel, my son, and Chloe, my daughter. They were late, of course. Not just a few minutes, but significantly late. And their faces, both of them, were glued to their phones, even as they walked across the elegant dining room. They barely looked up. The smile I'd prepared, the one I'd been practicing in my mind, it just died on my lips. It evaporated. Daniel, my eldest, he didn't even really look at me. He just slid into his seat and immediately started talking to his wife, Sarah, as if I wasn't the one paying for everything. He just muttered about how expensive everything was, about the cost of living, to Sarah. And Chloe, my sweet Chloe, she just nodded along, uncomfortable, I think, but still nodding. She didn't say anything to him. She didn't try to change the subject. She just sat there, looking down at her hands sometimes, then at me quickly, then away. The conversation that followed wasn't a conversation at all. It revolved entirely around them, their lives, their plans. They talked about a big vacation trip they were planning, somewhere warm, somewhere expensive. I listened, trying to find a gap to ask a question, to be part of it, but there wasn't one. And I wasn't invited. It was just a given. They were going. I wasn't. Then they moved on to their next big need, a new car. They detailed the features they wanted, the models they were looking at, how much it would cost. It was like I was just a silent audience, there to listen to their personal budget meeting, but with no role to play. And then it came, the final blow, the one that truly took my breath away. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, she leaned towards Daniel, her voice clear, distinct, loud, so loud. It was as if she wanted to make sure I heard her, or perhaps as if she truly believed I was deaf or invisible. "Honey," she said, so casually, "have you thought about how much the sale of your mother's house would help us with the down payment on our new apartment? She doesn't even need all that space, really." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard in my entire life. It roared in my ears. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, frozen. I looked at Daniel. He didn't even hesitate. He nodded. My son. He nodded in agreement. And Chloe, my daughter, my youngest, she averted her gaze. She couldn't look at me. She just looked down at the table, her face a mask of discomfort. But she said nothing. Not a single word to defend me. Not a word of protest. Complicit. In her omission, in her silence. In that very moment, sitting at that elegant table, I was no longer their mother. I wasn't Eleanor. I was just a property, an obstacle, an account to be settled, an item on a list. That's what I was. I felt it deeply. My chest ached. But then, through the haze of my pain, I noticed something. A young waitress, her name tag said Lucy, was standing near our table. She had been refilling our water glasses, moving quietly. She was probably no older than Chloe. I saw her glance at me. Just a quick, fleeting look. And in her eyes, I saw it. Compassion, pity maybe, but also understanding. She noticed my distress. She discreetly refilled my water glass, her hand gentle, and her look, even for just a second, was one of true human kindness. She was the only person at that table in that entire restaurant who truly saw me. The only one who saw me as a person, not a problem. At that instant, something snapped inside me. The seamstress within me, the one who spent her life mending what was broken, felt it. The last stitch of our family relationship. It wasn't just unraveling, it was gone, torn apart. I didn't cry, you know, not a single tear. I didn't scream either. There was no scene, no dramatic outburst in that fancy restaurant. A part of me, the one that used to crumble, just went completely cold. I felt a strange, almost astonishing calm take hold of me, right then and there. It was like an invisible shield came up. I swallowed every bit of that humiliation, that bitter taste of rejection. I did it. I paid the bill just as I'd planned. I even managed a polite smile to the waitress, Lucy, who had shown me that little bit of kindness. And then I said goodbye to Daniel and Chloe and Sarah, as if nothing, absolutely nothing, had happened. As if their words, Sarah's words, Daniel's nod, Chloe's silence, hadn't ripped me apart inside. They seemed relieved, truly. It was palpable. like they had just gotten rid of an annoying task, an obligation they needed to tick off their list. They barely bothered with a real farewell. Just a quick nod, a mumbled, "Thanks, Mom," and they were off. I watched them get into their car, the expensive one Daniel always talked about wanting. They were laughing about something I don't know what, something I wasn't a part of, something that had nothing to do with me. As the car pulled away, I stood there, on the sidewalk, alone in the cool night air. I just gazed at the elegant facade of the Golden Spoon. The soft lights of the sign glowed, a mockery of the warmth I had hoped for. That night, back in my simple, quiet house, I lay in my bed. The pain, oh, the pain was still there, a deep ache in my chest. But as the hours stretched on, it shifted. It didn't break me. Instead, it gave way to something else, an astonishing clarity. It was like a fog had lifted, revealing everything in sharp, undeniable detail. I remembered the old leather deed, the one I kept tucked away in the back of my desk drawer. The contract, the one my late husband and I had signed so many years ago. Over 30 years ago it was. A lifetime ago, almost. I remembered my small business, the one Daniel and Chloe always dismissed, the one they so underestimated. They thought it was nothing, a little sideline. They had forgotten who I was, or maybe they had never truly known. But I hadn't forgotten, not for a second. I wasn't that fragile victim they saw sitting at the table tonight. No, I was Eleanor, and I was the owner of that very place, the Golden Spoon. My mind started working, not with anger, but with a quiet, steely resolve. My plan wouldn't be one of revenge, not in the cruel way they probably deserved. No, it would be a plan of dignity, my dignity. I wouldn't retaliate with anger, or with shouting, or with tears. I wouldn't sink to their level. I would respond with truth, a quiet, undeniable truth. They had judged me. They had looked at me and seen an old woman, frail, no longer good for anything, a nuisance, someone easily cast aside. They had seen no worth in me, only a house they could sell. Now, I would show them. I would show them what they never bothered to learn, the strength. The quiet, unyielding strength I had built up in silence over a lifetime of mending and creating and saving. That strength would be my answer. It would be the final stitch, not to mend something broken, but to define something new. A new beginning for me. They thought the night was over. They drove away, laughing, probably already planning how to spend the money from my house. But for me? Oh no. For me, the real story was just beginning to be written. And they had no idea, not a clue. The days that followed that dinner, that awful, beautiful dinner at the Golden Spoon, they just confirmed everything I already knew. The cold, hard truth. I waited, just a tiny part of me, a very small, foolish part, hoped for a call, a text maybe, just a simple, "Thank you, Mom, for dinner." It was nice. But none of them called. Not Daniel. Not Chloe. Not Sarah. Not a single word of thanks. It was like the night had never even happened. Or if it had, It was just a transaction, not a family meal. They took what they wanted, my money, and then they vanished again. On the contrary, a whole week went by. A full 7 days of silence from them. And then the phone finally rang. It was Daniel, my eldest son. I picked it up, a flicker of something, maybe old hope, still alive inside me. But his voice, it was impatient, so impatient. He didn't even bother to ask how I was doing, not a single polite question. He went straight to the point, right to it. "Mom," he said, his voice flat, demanding, "have you thought about our conversation? You know, about the house. My house, the one he wanted to sell out from under me." He didn't stop there. "Sarah found a great real estate agent," he added, as if that was supposed to make me happy, as if it was a done deal, as if I had no say in the matter. His coldness, his sheer disregard for my feelings, it was like a knife, straight to my heart. Again, I tried. I really did. I tried to reach out to Chloe, my youngest. I wanted just a drop of affection from her, a hint of remorse, maybe, an understanding that what was happening, what they were doing, it was hurting me. She answered the phone, her voice rushed, so rushed. "Mom, I'm really busy right now," she said. "I'll call you back later." That later, it never came. It never, ever came. I felt it then, the complete abandonment. Firsthand, it wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was real, tangible. I was no longer a person to them, not their mother. I was a problem to be solved, an asset to be liquidated, something to be cashed in. That's all I was. The loneliness, it had never been so heavy before, never in my 75 years. It pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe sometimes. I walked through my quiet house, my simple house, the one they wanted to sell. I looked at the photos on the wall, all those memories. Daniel and Chloe as babies, as children, laughing, running into my arms. Their birthdays, their graduations, my life, every single memory. And I felt a deep, deep sadness, a sorrow that burrowed right into my bones. I had dedicated my entire life to them. Every stitch, every penny saved, every sacrifice. It was all for them, for their happiness. And now, in this phase of my life, the one where I most needed their affection, their care, their presence, what did I receive? Only greed, only indifference. The pain, it reached its absolute limit. It was a searing, suffocating pain. But instead of breaking me, instead of making me crumble and weep and give up, something else happened. It strengthened me. It solidified something inside me, a core of steel. It was time to act. My silence, it wasn't weakness anymore. It wasn't pain. It had a purpose now, a very clear purpose. And the stage for the final act, it was already set. It just didn't know it. Not yet. Not yet. That was when I knew. The time was now. Not yet, but soon. And so, with that new strength, that quiet resolve that had settled deep within me, I made my move. I summoned them. Daniel, Chloe, and Sarah Daniel's wife. I called each of them individually, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. I told them I needed to talk, to explain some things, to discuss my future and perhaps theirs. And where did I ask them to meet me? At the very same place, the Golden Spoon. The place where they had made me feel so small, so invisible. They arrived promptly this time, almost too promptly. I was already seated at our table, the same table where I had swallowed their indifference, sipping a cup of chamomile tea. I watched them walk in. Their expressions were a mixture of curiosity and a barely concealed impatience. I could practically read their thoughts. They were probably imagining that I had finally, after all this time, decided to give in, that I was going to tell them I was ready to sell the house, to hand them their inheritance on a silver platter. They sat down, Daniel across from me, Sarah beside him, Chloe opposite her, all of them eager, anxious almost, for what I had to say. I let them speak first. I just sat there, my hands folded, my gaze steady. They didn't disappoint. Daniel started talking about the rising cost of living, the need for more space, for a bigger apartment for his family. Sarah chimed in, reinforcing every point, talking about how much better for everyone it would be if I just downsized. Chloe, bless her heart, even added a hesitant comment about how I deserved to be free of the burden of a big house. They repeated all their arguments. They spoke of their needs, always their needs. Their voices were polite, even concerned in a superficial way, but underneath it, I could hear the hunger, the entitlement, the quiet demand. When they finally finished, when the last word of their practiced monologue died in the elegant silence of the restaurant, I took a deep breath, a slow, steady breath that filled me with calm, not fear. I looked at each of their faces. They looked back, still expectant. "I called you here," I began, my voice clear and firm, but without a hint of anger, "because this place, this restaurant, the Golden Spoon, it's very significant to me." They exchanged confused glances. Daniel looked annoyed. Chloe frowned. "It was here," I continued, my gaze unwavering, "that I realized something. The children I raised, they no longer exist." The air in the restaurant seemed to thicken. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "You look at me," I said, my voice quiet now, but cutting, "and you don't see a mother. You see an ATM, a property, something to be used. But you all forgot to ask about my small business." I paused. Then, slowly, deliberately, I reached into the large, practical handbag I always carried. I pulled out a worn leather folder. It wasn't flashy, just old and sturdy. I placed it gently on the white linen tablecloth, right in the center of our table. Daniel stared at it, a flicker of something, maybe confusion, in his eyes. "Inside this folder," I said, my voice gaining strength, "are the papers, the deed of sale for this property." I saw their eyes dart around the beautiful room, the elegant chandeliers, the expensive wine bottles. "And," I continued, my voice firm, allowing no room for interruption, "the articles of incorporation for the company that manages this restaurant." I watched their faces, the slow dawning, the realization. "This place," I said, my voice echoing slightly just in my own ears. Where you made me feel like trash, like an old, useless woman, like a burden. This place, the Golden Spoon, is mine. Their jaws, all three of them, dropped. Literally. Daniel's mouth hung open. Chloe gasped, a small, choked sound. Sarah's face, usually so composed, went utterly blank. The shock on their faces was indescribable. It was a beautiful, terrible sight. This restaurant, I went on, my heart aching, but steady. It was the investment your father and I made, over 30 years ago, made to secure our future, and one day, yours. My voice softened, but the truth was no less sharp. This restaurant, my house, everything I owned, everything would have been yours. It was meant to be your inheritance, your legacy. I leaned forward slightly, my gaze sweeping over each of their stunned faces. But you didn't want the mother. You wanted the inheritance. You were so busy looking at the house, you never saw what else was there. What else I had built. So you know what? I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of my words press down on them. You can keep the memory of this night, the memory of what you said, of how you made me feel. And then I delivered the final, quiet blow, the one that would forever change everything. Because the inheritance. I took another deep breath, letting the phrase hang in the air, a bell tolling. Now bears another name. The silence that settled in the aftermath of my words wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of their world collapsing. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something shift inside me, a peace I hadn't known existed. The silence that settled after I spoke those last words was indeed the sound of their world collapsing. But it wasn't my concern anymore. I didn't wait. I didn't need to see their full reaction, their shame, their anger. I just stood up, slowly, calmly. I looked at their stunned faces one last time, then I turned and walked out of the Golden Spoon, leaving them there, alone, with the truth I had just laid bare, the truth of who I was and who they were. In the days that followed, my phone didn't stop ringing, not for a minute. It was a constant stream of calls from Daniel, desperate messages from Chloe, texts from Sarah. They were full of apologies, of course, elated, desperate. They talked about misunderstandings, about stress, about how much they loved me. All the things they should have said months, even years ago, when it mattered, when it was real. But I didn't answer. Not a single call, not a single message. And you know what? The peace I felt, a quiet, deep peace that settled over me, was far more important than any apology forced by self-interest. Their regret was theirs to carry now, not mine. My life, it truly changed, but not in a dramatic, sudden way. It was more like the quiet unfolding of a well-loved fabric. It changed for the better. I started frequenting the Golden Spoon more often, not as a solitary customer, sipping tea and watching my children turn away from me. No, now I walked in as the owner, the one who held the keys, literally and figuratively. I'd walk through the dining room, nodding to the staff, sometimes just observing, sometimes making suggestions. It felt right. It felt like home, a different kind of home. And Lucy, dear Lucy, the young waitress who had shown me such quiet compassion that night. We talked more. I found out she was a gastronomy student, working hard to pay her way, full of dreams about opening her own little place one day. She had a passion for food, a gentle heart, and a genuine respect for people. She was everything my own children seemed to have forgotten how to be. I saw so much potential in her, so much goodness. I decided, without a moment's hesitation, that she would be my protégée. I started teaching her about the business side of the restaurant, about the books, about managing the staff, about the suppliers. She absorbed everything like a sponge, her eyes bright with eagerness. It wasn't just about the business, though. We'd sit and talk for hours sometimes, after closing, about life, about dreams, about the small joys of the day. She listened to me, truly listened, something I hadn't experienced from my own children in far too long. She saw me, Eleanor, not just an old woman, but someone with a lifetime of experience, with stories to tell. And in turn, I saw her, a young woman full of promise, a new kind of family forming, not by blood, but by connection. I went home to my little house every night, the same house, with its familiar smells and comfortable chairs. The photos were still on the walls, all of them. Daniel, Chloe, their happy faces from years gone by. But now, when I looked at them, I didn't feel that deep, wrenching pain. I didn't feel the sharp sting of loneliness or the ache of betrayal. No, I looked at them with a quiet serenity. The sadness was still there, a soft echo, but it was overshadowed by the peace of someone who had closed a difficult, necessary chapter. I was no longer alone, not really. I was surrounded by a new kind of family, the one I chose. A family based on respect, on kindness, on genuine affection. I felt a new strength in my dignity, a quiet resilience I hadn't known I possessed. I discovered that the best stitching isn't about mending torn fabric anymore. It's the one that mends your own soul. You know, after all that, after everything that happened, I realized something truly profound. It wasn't just about the restaurant, or the house, or even the money. It was about something much deeper. It was about finding my own worth again, after others had tried so hard to take it away. I spent a lifetime trying to mend things, stitch things back together. But this time, the mending was for myself, my own soul. And it felt like the most important work I'd ever done. My hands, these old hands, have been busy for 75 years, mending, sewing, creating. I used to think the most beautiful thing I could create was a perfectly tailored dress or a strong family bond. But the truth is, the most powerful thing I ever created was my own peace. It took pain, a lot of pain, to get there. The kind of pain that comes when the people you poured your life into seem to forget you exist, or worse, only see you as a means to an end. It makes you feel like a ghost in your own home, in your own life. I learned that injustice, when it comes from those you love, can be the sharpest needle. It pierces right through you. But it can also be the thing that forces you to re-examine everything, to see where your true strength lies. For me, it was in that quiet resolve, that knowing that I was more than just a mother or a widow. I was Eleanor, a woman who had built something, who had survived, and who still had dignity even when others tried to strip it away. The new beginning, it wasn't loud or flashy. It was in the quiet conversations with Lucy, in the feeling of purpose as I walked through my restaurant, in the knowing that my choices were now truly my own. It taught me that respect isn't given because of blood, but because of how you treat another human being. It's about seeing their value, their story, their heart, not just what you can gain from them. It's a lesson I wish my children had learned for their own sakes. Because when you stop seeing the person, when you only see an object, a burden, a possession, you lose something vital in yourself. You lose the ability to truly connect, to truly love. And that's a far greater loss than any inheritance. Life has taught me that sometimes the biggest disappointments come from where we place our greatest love. And it hurts. It truly does. But what about you? Have you ever felt undervalued, as if your presence were just an obligation for the people you love most? Have you ever had to swallow the pain of indifference to avoid causing problems, to keep the peace, even when it was breaking you inside? It's a common story, isn't it? Especially for those of us who have lived many years. Sometimes, as we get older, it feels like society and even our own families start to see us less. As if our wisdom becomes old-fashioned, our needs become burdens, and our lives become inconvenient. We become invisible, just waiting for the last chapter to be written for us by others. But remember that your worth isn't in what others think of you or in how much they can get from you. Your worth is in the strength you carry within. The strength to stand up, even quietly. To say no, even without words. To reclaim what is yours, even if it's just your own peace of mind. Sometimes, the greatest act of self-love is rewriting the ending of your own story, taking the pen back into your own hand. It's about reclaiming your name, your identity, as the primary heir to your own peace, to your own happiness, to your own life. Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by those who should see you most clearly? It's a question that stays with you long after the moment has passed. And the answer, it can change everything. It's certainly changed everything for me. Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by those who should see you most clearly? It's a question that stays with you long after the moment has passed. And the answer, it can change everything. It certainly changed everything for me. My life now, it's not what I imagined it would be when I pictured my old age, surrounded by my loving children. No, it's different, but it's beautiful in its own way. It's a quiet beauty, a deep, settled peace that has finally, truly found its way into my heart. The ache is gone. The sharp sting of betrayal, the crushing weight of loneliness, they've lifted. It's as if a heavy cloak, woven from disappointment, has been gently taken from my shoulders. And in its place, I feel a lightness, a freedom. I still live in my simple house, the one filled with memories and photos. And I still look at those pictures, But now, when my gaze falls on Daniel's earnest young face or Chloe's joyful smile from years past, there's no bitterness, just a quiet understanding, a kind of gentle acceptance. They are who they are, and I am who I am, and my peace, my dignity, my happiness no longer depend on their choices or their affections. That was the real turning point, you see, the moment I truly claimed my own worth, independent of their approval. My days are filled now, not with longing, but with purpose. I spend more time at the Golden Spoon. It feels natural, like a second home. Walking through the dining room, seeing the familiar faces of the staff, hearing the clinking of glasses and the hum of happy conversations. It fills me with a different kind of warmth, a warmth that comes from building something, from nurturing it, and from sharing it with those who truly appreciate it. Lucy, she's become like the daughter I never truly had, or perhaps the daughter I always needed. Her eagerness to learn, her genuine kindness, her bright spirit, they bring so much light into my life. We talk for hours, sometimes late into the night after the last customers have left. I share my stories, not just of the restaurant, but of my life, of my husband, of my dreams. And she listens, truly listens. Her eyes, so full of life, look at me and truly see me. Not an old woman, not a burden, not a property. Just Eleanor, a human being with a past, a present, and a future she can still shape. She's learning the ropes of the business so quickly, and I see her dreams taking shape. She talks about new recipes, about expanding the menu, about the future of the Golden Spoon. And it makes me smile, a real smile, from deep inside. Because in her, I see the continuation of something good. A legacy built on genuine connection, on hard work, and on heart. It's a legacy that will be passed on, not by blood, but by shared values and mutual respect. And that, I've realized, is far more precious than any inheritance tied to obligation or greed. The quiet of my home, it's no longer empty. It's filled with the echoes of my own renewed spirit. I find joy in the simple things again. A good book, a cup of tea by the window, the gentle rhythm of my own breath. I've learned that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on tightly to what's gone, but having the courage to release it, to forgive, and to embrace the unexpected gifts that life still has in store. It's about tending to your own garden, about making sure your own soul is well nourished. And mine, after all these years, is finally flourishing. My story. It's just one, but there are so many others, so many real truths out there, waiting to be heard. And if you feel like these stories matter, if you want to keep hearing them, then there's something important you need to know. And if you want to continue receiving real stories like this one, stay alert. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon. Because sometimes, dear one, the greatest lessons aren't about what you gain, be